We are live.
I think we are. Uh, did the intro that did not play? So if people are still down in the audience, I'll play our regular intro.
Hi, guys, and welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show. We help Muslims and non Muslims to handle Islam in the 21st century. My name is Mustafa, and this is my co host in the nick of time. If you wish to talk about Islam, the ideology, you have come to the right place. We cover current Islamic news, Islamic scripture, some crazy comments, and a weekly topic about Islam to examine, critique, and analyze. If this is not enough Islam for you, please drop by our Discord to discuss any further questions about Islam. We condemn any form of discrimination, violence, misogyny, slavery. However, we do embrace free speech and criticism if it's factual and correct. Thank you for stopping by and enjoy the Gin and Tonic Show.
All right, finally, just for old time's sake. But yeah, welcome to the show, Culture Jenny.
Thank you for thank you for allowing me to be here.
You're always welcome. As a Jin myself or a Kufar, we need someone who has a culture to join on. So that's why we call the Culture Jin.
Indeed.
Yeah, so happy holidays, everyone. Quick announcements that I'm gonna make. So on Christmas Day, what I did was I compiled a few of the episodes that I really like from this year, and I'm gonna play them as a live stream premiere. And it's going to be, I believe, a 8 hour long live stream of just my favorite videos, just looped and playing. And then what I'm also going to do for the next week's show, it's actually the 500th episode. I'm currently working with an organization that helps with human and sex traffic victims in India. And I know it's a local charity, meaning they don't actually take any wages. They're not international. They help people just in that state with volunteers. So they do very good work. I've personally seen their work, and I'm going to be making a donation on behalf of the Gin and Tonic Show. And I'll also put up the link in the live stream that we do next chat for anyone who wants to donate as well. But yeah, is there anything that you're doing special for the holidays, Culture Ginny?
Oh, I'm going to spend it with my relatives.
Yeah, it's always fun to spend the holidays with your relatives. I think that's what the holidays are meant for. Or basically, back in the day, at least the cultural side, I think they were designed so everyone from the family would come together at least for the religious note, but then that would just be an excuse just to gather and have family fun.
I mean, the fact that almost all religions have these types of family gatherings shows that it fills a kind of social need.
Yeah, it I always liked the holidays, but just not the religious aspect of it. But I do understand that back in the day, the religious side probably helped just gather people, put the fear of God into people. Hey, you don't come and celebrate this holiday, you're going to go to hell.
Yeah, this is actually one of the reasons as to why I usually don't, make a fuss about holidays and religious people when they go to holidays. I'm not that kind of guy that would say, "Oh, don't say Merry Christmas, say Happy Holiday or something, or Happy
Oh, yeah.
Gathering Day or something," because that is just sorry. Sure, it is religious, and it is so, but it's also very culturally significant for people.
Yeah, definitely. But basically, today we'll get onto topic as well. I don't know if you can see it, but this is actually an article that I also sent Moose last week. Unfortunately, last week I someone tried to throw a surprise party for me, and they forgot the surprise part. So
All right.
so I wasn't actually able to come to the show. But yeah, I have some an additional document that I have that I want to go through today, and then a video that I also want to react to. So, Islamophobia in Canada. Basically, the Noor Cultural Center, I tried reaching out to them. If they're watching this, they I'm in Toronto as well, so I can actually come to you guys and we can set up a professional interview for gin and tonic. But I did try reaching out, and it didn't really go through. And I'll try my best to be fair during this talk that we're doing for your article here. So as we're going through it, just into the introduction itself, this is an analysis. In this analysis, Islamophobia is defined as an unfounded or disproportionate fear or a hatred of Islam and Muslims, or people perceived to be Muslims, leading to violence and systemic discrimination. Culture Jenny, do you agree with this definition, or is there anything you'd like to add or take away?
I mean, I can probably work with this due to the fact that it is stated unfounded or disproportionate. I'm more of a problem with, because this leaves a lot of things. What is unfounded and what is disproportionate?
Yeah, I would actually split this into two because we saw with people like um the gentleman who came from Slack onto our channel to offer Faiz King. We had multiple Islamic guests. Smart Cat, who was on here last year. If you get, I'm not saying this as an insult overall. I'm just saying this in a way. I think this like statement probably summarizes it. Where you get 5 religious people in a group, you're going to get 6 different versions of that religion. So I'd have to say that merging both the fear of Muslims and then the fear of an ideology is rather odd, like into one definition. I'd have to say that they're two separate kinds of
Yeah, that too. I was more focused upon how they defined unfounded or disproportionate, but
yeah.
but you're correct in that they also define it as the people believing in the religion and the religion. They don't separate between here because you can actually be very critical only to the religion. In
Yeah,
kind of a way, I can still see how it will spill over because I don't believe that there is at all a separation between the religion and the people that believe in the religion. But I still think that you should have some sort of separation, even if in reality and in actual fact there is some kind of blurred lines here.
yeah. And I would have to say that there's a difference between the fear of an ideology and the fear of a person following that ideology. For example, pure socialism or Marxism or something like that. I'm more scared of someone who's an extreme follower of that than I am of the actual theory behind it, right? Because I'm more than willing to discuss Marxism or debate on that topic. But if I'm going to sit with someone who claims to be a Marxist, I'm going to be scared to talk to those people just based off of the Antifa people or the threats that I've received, right? So just the ideology is different from the person believing that ideology because there's so many interpretations that one can make, and the fact that I can't tell if you're going to choose the violent one or the more moderate one is for me going to be more scary. I
There
don't
is
know if
also
that would, yeah.
there is also the fact that when it comes to this definition, that ideologies may drive people to act, but in the end, it's people that actually do the acts.
Yeah, exactly. If someone's suffering from some sort of mental health disorder, they're going to cling on to, if Islam didn't exist, they're going to go into neo-Nazi kind of activity
I mean,
Or
I have an acquaintance that I've seen jumping from Marxism to like far right stuff,
yeah,
and I just the only thing I felt was you haven't changed at all. You have just changed the like the banner you're acting under.
yeah. This actual statement here, I actually agree with that they put on. So the proportionate criticism of Islam and Muslims based on factual evidence is not intrinsically Islamophobia. Just a criticism of the tenets or the followers of other religions or ethnic groups does not necessarily indicate bigotry or prejudice. What do you say to this as well? I think like it's a good line that they included.
Yeah, that's very good.
Um, yeah, this gendered aspect and this racism of it. I think the racism is more internal in the religion
I can
than
agree that it's that what we would consider, or what at least I would consider Islamophobia or hatred towards Islam is usually gendered.
yeah, it
Because
is
there are,
gender.
yeah, I mean, but this also goes back to what are the ideals in,
Yeah,
traditionalist Islam, and what are, the ideals concerning women there. And, these stereotypes types exist kind of also as a reflection of those ideals, do usually even more exaggerated in the, anti-Islamic propaganda than they are even in the Islamic context.
definitely. But I think the issue of the genders and then the issues of racism come from more. They probably exist whether Islam is there or not. So it's not
Yeah, yeah.
really Islamophobia that's causing those issues. It's
Yeah, it is true with no, I would say also that the gender thing has to do somewhat with the ideals that are,
yeah,
you know, found in the Quran and the Sunnah. But when it comes to the racism, that is something that exists external, just
yeah,
because people just dislike people from what they perceive as being brown. When it comes to white people, for example.
yeah, definitely. Now these are some statistics that they did based off of surveys. They cited everything here. I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt that these are legitimate studies that they did. So I'm just gonna read off some of the statistics here just in case people are listening to the audio of this later. So 46% of Canadians have an unfavorable view of Islam, more than any other religious traditions. Fewer than half of Canadians would find it acceptable for one of their children to marry a Muslim, lower than any other religious group. 56% of Canadians believe that Islam suppresses women's rights. Um, More than half of people living in Ontario feel mainstream Muslim doctrine promotes violence. 52% of Canadians feel Muslims can only be trusted little or not at all. 42% of Canadians think discrimination against Muslims is mainly their fault. 47% of Canadians support banning headscarves in public compared to 30% of Americans. 51% support government surveillance on mosques as compared to 46% of Americans. And then we got two more here that I'll just read. 31% of Canadians approve of American President Donald Trump's restrictions on travelers from Muslim majority countries. And 55% of Canadians think the problem of Islamophobia is overblown by politicians and media. And only 29% supported a non binding parliamentary motion to condemn study Islamophobia here. So we'll go by the survey's points one on one and just have a brief discussion of them. So the first topic here, what do you think of that, Culture Chin?
I mean, unfavorable view of Islam can be very broad. I could be considered to have a very unfavorable view to Islam. But
Yeah,
I can still appreciate a lot of, Islamicate culture and a lot of things that Islam as a religion actually function. I can also appreciate the function it has had historically as well. But I could be under those 46%, so it doesn't tell us much.
exactly. Does unfavorable include people who criticize, or does it include people who hate it? Um, and this study here is only done in Quebec as well in 27, right after a terrorist attack as well. Um,
Yeah, so it will probably be a bit slanted.
yeah, Quebec, for people who don't know, is it's a province that's majorly francophone. I had to work
Yeah,
there,
they speak
and
French.
yeah, I had to work there for a year, and I actually went to French immersion since I was 4. I've done half my course, meaning if I studied 4 courses a semester, 2 of them were taught in French at random. So I was learning both. So I'm actually fluent in French. Learned it since I was a child. Yet I can go there to Quebec and they'll still hate my French. Um, so
I can just say
Quebec
that I
is,
can't speak French at all. So
yeah. The thing in Paris, I think they're used to tourists. So when I go to Paris, I'll go to a cafe or whatever on my layovers. I'll be like, "Je voudrais un café, s'il vous plaît, une petite café de lait," and I'll make my order and everything. And they'll just be like, "Oh, good. Here, you're trying whatever, right?" In French, they look at me like I'm a villain, or in Quebec, they look at me like I'm a villain. It's like I go into the same Tim Hortons. I'm like, "Je voudrais un café." They'll look at me, "Et vous," an anglophone, and I'm like, my English starts, and I'm like, "Yes, I'm an anglophone. Can I get my coffee? Did you a favor? I ordered in French. You don't like it." So I
I
think
mean,
there's like
I think also that it is since so many people even there speak English, and then they will begin to wonder, why are you speaking French? Are you,
yeah,
are you trying to insult me or something? That usually happens a lot when you are in certain mixed areas in Europe, where you begin to speak one language, but the other things that you are better in the other one. So he asks, why are you doing this?
yeah. So yeah, like I had a, I actually say Paris was a bit more favorable. They were still pieces of shit, but they were a bit more favorable than the pieces of shit in Quebec. So when they say that the study's actually from Quebec, that too right after a terrorist attack, because in 2017 they had like the attack on the parliament, right? I'd have to say like I think the study here is skewed.
I mean, the next one, fewer than
Uh,
half of Canadians would find it acceptable for one of their children to marry a Muslim, lower than for any other religious group. I mean, this
because
one here you have the fact that it is kind of the fact of the matter is that since it's the man that will marry a non-Muslim woman, they do have that fear that it will be dominant, that she will be dominated by the husband.
yeah, I'd like to just ask like what if, because they're making it seem like the victim, right? I'm
Yeah.
sure, like let's say that this is 40%, right? 40, less than half. 40% seems fair, right? Would 40% of Muslims be happy with their children marrying a non-Muslim?
To be honest, though, that is kind of what aboutism.
It is, but the reason why I bring that up is because they don't go into detail about um why, how far are you going to,
It's also the
how far
same.
did the discussions go, right?
Yeah,
Because let's say they're in the talks of discussing a marriage, and then it gets to the point of, hey, you got to convert to my religion. Obviously, like Canadians are going to say no, right? Same way that the other side would say no, I'm not gonna.
It is
leave my
also the
religion
same
for it.
study as the previous statement.
It's from 4, so that means
Yeah, 4 is ibid just means the same as above.
uh,
So it's from the
yeah.
same. It's
Ah,
also from that study during the, in
yeah,
Quebec. And
yeah. The statement is ambiguous, like very broad though, because at what stage are they saying no or it's not acceptable, right? Because like I can switch it around and ask the same thing where at what stage are Muslims not okay with that, right? So it's that I don't know how to articulate it in a better way, but I hope I like got my point across for it. The next one, so 56% of Canadians believe Islam suppresses women's rights.
I mean,
So
I would say that according to most traditional views of about the role of women and how I think most people in Canada view the role of women in society, that according to those mainstream Canadian views, that would be the case.
uh, I have a question. If Islam promoted what women's rights, why would Abu Tate or Andrew Tate convert to it?
Don't let me speak about that guy, please. I have enough with one headache thing to focus upon.
Yeah. So, and then the next one is more than half of Canadians living in Ontario feel mainstream Muslim doctrines promote violence. So, I'd like to ask, under if Sharia conditions are met, what would happen to me?
You would probably be tried for blasphemy.
Yeah.
Biased traditional views. Not to say that
If
every Muslim believes this.
Yeah, but the statement they put here is Muslim doctrines, not Muslim people,
Yeah, exactly.
right? So under 100% Sharia law, what would happen to me? Yeah.
It depends on the school traditions. In the Hanafi school, you would probably just get flogged for the first infraction. Some of the others would probably, have harsher punishments. The Shafi'i tradition would also, flog you and then demand an official repentance from you. And then if you don't give it, kill you.
And this is from study 6 here, again from the Toronto Star. It's a survey done by them, and they call it an epidemic. So this one, I don't know where they're pulling this from. What does a little or not at all mean?
Washington Post. Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
uh,
you have to look at the survey alternatives.
yeah. Because one thing, Washington's Post, I don't trust their surveys just due to the sheer low numbers of their survey polls in general. But then, and then this isn't just one survey, right? This is multiple surveys.
Yeah.
Yet they think like it's one particular survey. They don't mention more details from it and such. So this is from the same link as well. I I don't really know what they mean. It's really vague.
Yeah, really. The problem is since we should, in truth, we should really go back and look through all of these studies if we were to do this in a very, determined and,
Yeah.
academic way. But I will also say that there is one issue I have when you take several studies like this and just present the data like this. And this is because you have a risk here of a skewed bias percent percentatistic view, as you choose only the studies that present the worst cases, and then you present them all together, all of the various different negative studies, ignoring all of the good studies that could, if when you don't just do one study and show the results from one study, where you have actually other things in the study, but you show several studies and you should only take the studies that are negative, then you will bias your results to the negative.
Yeah. This support banning of headscarves in public. That's from number 9. This is from McLean's article. Let me just pull up a source I have on that. So let me. Yeah, because like I remember it wasn't as racist as people claim. So basically, it was only people representing the government who were because they were in a secular country. They had to show secular values by not wearing religious symbols. This included turbans, crosses, and such.
You went past those things that I wanted to discuss that I thought were really interesting in the past one.
Oh, which ones?
That where you showed the various survey results about Islamophobia, because I
Oh, I
wanted to
just
go.
yeah,
You
just briefly before we get back to those, I was going to say like the next one that I want to cover is 47% of Canadians support banning the headscarves in public. Whereas I'm just showing you an article where it's not actually them banning it in public. They're just banning it in government uh, areas of work. Like when you're a judge or you're a police officer or you're a teacher, you have to at a government school, you're working for the government, which is a secular organization. So you have to show secular values. Now they didn't ban it on private areas, private security and such. It was only for government institutions. So yeah, let me just get back to this tab here. Yeah, so what do you say to this statement, Culture Ginny?
The thing that I thought was more interesting with this one and the next one is that the support for things that limitations upon religious freedoms for Muslims seems to be higher in Canada than in the United States. I thought that this was very interesting. And
Yeah,
it make and I've always actually suspected kind of that this might be the case, as Canada, in if I'm going to stereotype it, is generally a lot more left secular left, and not left wing, but more secularist liberal in its
yeah,
attitude in comparison to the United States, that is more accepting of more traditionalist viewpoints.
yeah. But for
So
these two, one thing I have to say is that you don't see any Hindus or Sikhs or Jews complaining about it. Even the Orthodox people who, let's say, Hindus take who are extremely Orthodox, they don't take issue with having certain prayers or such banned, or like their religious symbols being banned as
but
teachers
but I
and
can say
such.
that a lot of traditionalist American Christians would probably have a lot of issues if the government said, now we're going to do surveillance on your church. Or, if they, felt that the government were beginning to impose religious values or beginning to, impose religious views. So they still, I do think that in a certain way, they kind of, ironically enough, Christian, traditionalist Christianity in the United States might be more tolerant towards Islam than more progressive attitude or the more progressive culture in Canada might be.
Yeah, and one thing I would have to mention as a difference
Sorry,
between the
my tongue
states.
was kind of. Oh,
Oh, no worries. But yeah, one thing I wanted to mention on that note is for the Christians in America versus the ones in Canada, there's a more of a bipartisan of ideology in the States than there are in Canada, right? So I think there's a lot of centrists that want to get the same amount of stuff done here, like in Canada, for example, certain bans and such. But because the people at the top are so dichotomous, it's actually hard to get stuff done in the States. Whereas in Canada, one example I can bring as a metaphor is the concept of healthcare, right? So if you're talking to the most conservative of the healthcare people in Canada, to the most liberal ones, they probably both agree that healthcare should be free. They just don't agree on which portion of healthcare. So they're probably saying they're determining whether psychiatry should be free or not. But overall, healthcare in general, they just think should be free. Whereas in the States, universal healthcare is still debated upon. Health insurance
yeah,
is
yeah.
still debated upon. Same thing here, where
They have a system that is more polarized there, but there is
yeah,
also the fact that I think that there is still a kind of skepticism towards the government going into religious matter and determining how people should live religiously. That is, traditionally frowned upon a lot more in the United States than it is in Canada.
yeah. One thing I actually like is I don't want Canada to come off as racist because our leaders, both Stephen Harper, who I lived under, and then Justin Trudeau, who
Yeah,
I also lived. They both were very open to religious communities. They'd go to mosques and celebrate Eid.
yeah,
Justin
but
Trudeau would, yeah. So like, and I think most of the government, the MPs and everyone are very open.
I can agree with that, but I would say that one thing is also important to remember, and that is that this so-called openness and progressiveness also is diametrically opposed to, to more traditionalist interpretations of Islam. And there is a kind of contradiction here with saying, "Oh, I'm so tolerant about this," and at the same time, the thing that that you're saying that you're tolerant about is the opposite of what you want, and that you usually are not tolerant about when it's even in a smaller dosage coming from Christianity or the like. And this actually, I do think that there is under surface a lot of tension here
Yeah, definitely.
that I
Yeah.
think that the more progressive culture of Canada actually does bring forth. So I could actually see Canadians being more, in a certain way, anti-Islam than Americans are.
Yeah, and one thing about all these studies is that this was actually taken in 2020, but all the articles that they're trying to find is 2017, 2017, 2012, 2016, 2017. There's out of all these articles and surveys that she took, there's only 4 articles here that are. So I think it's out of 15 articles, only 4 articles are after 2017. And right out of 2017, we had a terrorist incident in Ottawa, right?
Yeah.
So I think this article is extremely skewed because of that. I don't know what kind of bias that might implicate on this, but I would have to say if you are putting a article out like this, I'd expect your um, articles and surveys to be more recent than, again, 2012 or 2016 or 2017. Would you say that's a fair assessment, Culture Gin?
I would say that the main issue is that since they are from different points of time, they could also represent different attitudes because attitudes change. And then now they are presenting everything as the same attitude on the same moment of time.
Yeah, especially
And
this.
I'm also saying that they are taking the absolute worst cases here, so it is
Yeah.
biased in that direction.
Yeah, and for example, this one that I just highlighted, 30%, 31% of Canadians approve of American President Donald Trump's restrictions on travelers from Muslim majority countries. And number 11, that was taken in June 2017. And that was right after like I mentioned again, an attack in Ottawa.
Yeah.
So I don't know how fair it is to take that number because, like, in 2020, pre-COVID, I'd say that number would be really low considering the fact that Canada took in 25,000 refugees, and people were happy about it during that time.
Yes, oh, for Face King, actually.
Pardon?
There is Arthur Face King
Yeah.
did make a good comment here, and
Yeah.
actually we do say that these people are not only the Jews but the Arabs, the Maltese, the Amharic and Tigrinya speaking Ethiopians, and some other people such as the Syriac speakers and and other Aramaic dialect speakers are Semitic peoples, as they do speak languages that are Semitic.
Definitely. I'm gonna put the
So
link for the
this isn't a new definition of the Semitic, because
yeah
they are all seen as being descendants of the
same.
of Sam or Sham, and they being from that line after Noah.
Because I think the people who, for example, are quite racist, like I mentioned, I got anti-Muslim bigotry towards me. Like, people don't have to tell me that that kind of racism exists because I grew up in North America right after
Or
9/11.
yeah, I can
So
definitely see that.
a
Considering
racist.
that Swedes have even called me a sand. The N
Oh
word.
yeah, oh yeah. I got told to go back to my country, and I'm like, here, go back to where I'm from. I was like, bro, where? Windsor, Toronto? Like, I got a Canadian
Dude.
passport here.
Yeah, yeah. Dude, and I've gotten the same treatment, and I've just said, dude, I've lived here. I've, family lines here that go back to, for hundreds of years. Back to the,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, no, I remember, like, even like last year, so I got that. I'm like, you know what? So when I got told to go back to my country, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try. I went to India for a 6 month trip. I couldn't last 4 months. I could not last 4 months. My air conditioning temperature gave people colds there. So me going back to my country is not gonna work. But yeah, on that note, I have to say, like, this is right after an attack in 2017. So I don't know how valid this statement here is. Um, and especially this one as well. Um, number 12. if Canadians, not MPs, voted in the House, the motion condemning Islamophobia would be defeated. And this was also in March. Yeah, and I think that's mainly because most people are just too busy worrying about other stuff. And when they say overblown, they're not denying that it exists, but they just don't think it's as big of an issue as other kinds of things, right?
Yeah.
All right, so I think in the media, this one is a really good statement for us to react to. So, for example, so basically, multiple analyses of Canadian and U.S. media have included Islam and Muslims receive disproportionately negative coverage, both quantitatively and qualitatively. And an example of this is, for example, a study in the Global Mail by communication studies professor Yasmin Giovanni found 66 articles on the Shafia femicide case alone, which is widely represented as a honor killing, but only 59 on the murder of women and domestic violence in general from 2005 to
Uh,
2012.
I could see this as being a result of, over focus upon the negatives associated with Muslim immigrants here. Because even when it comes to femicide and honor killing, most of it isn't Islamic. It's just killing and
It's just
it
tribal
could have to
killing,
do
yeah.
with, yes. And, it's also, as you, for example, still here, it does kind of seem overblown when it has more articles than just other murders generally of women due to domestic violence in total.
Yeah, and then here, the Quebec mosque shooting in January 2017 received approximately 5 minutes of airtime on CBC's flagship news program, The National, that night that it occurred, while the London borough attacks in the UK in June 2017 received several hours of live reportage and commentary.
Yeah.
Is it on the
I do
same? Yeah.
I do also think that there is one other reason why this is. It is I do have the suspicion that a lot of journalists or reporters are a lot, you know, are kind of lazy, or they are kind of afraid to, dip their toes in things that could be filled with either work or a little bit of exposure to a little bit of danger. And that is that they don't want to handle things that involve foreigners, because then they feel they are outside of their element, and it becomes, there are risks for repercussions if you do one step wrong. And also, it doesn't draw as many views as if you do something much more easily and emotionally charged, like showing people that look like your mainstream audience suffering, or being agitated. You need to get those views and clicks, baby.
Oh yeah. This one though, I really hate how they worded it. So there were 349 police reports, hate crimes against Muslims in 2017, and 173 in 2018, according to the most recent Statistics Canada data available. Now, they're saying, oh, it's a total of this, but I'm more surprised that they're not saying that it reduced by almost
Yeah,
60%.
if it tripled also between 22 and 15, and then it reduced again, then I think that this is something that is very hard to make good statistics on, because the fluctuations and variations are very large each year.
Yeah, we see the fluctuations from 2012 to 2017, yet somehow they're taking this range of 2010 to 2017. because
Yeah.
from 2018 it significantly reduced here. So again, I'm not saying that number ideally it shouldn't even be 173. It should be 0 in the most ideal case. No one should be attacking a person in hate crimes, but 173 is a lot better than 349.
Indeed, it is.
And then you see that how it's such volatility from 2012 to
Yeah.
2015, and then showing that I think it's slightly dishonest to have the way they worded it here. Again, ideally
Yes.
it should be at 0. No one should get attacked. I'm not saying that any attack or whatever should happen, but yeah. So yeah. Oh, I remember this incident as well. And then the Sikh incidents, like I mentioned, after 9/11, we felt that kind
Yeah.
of issue as well. So the legal side of this, I wanted Moose to go through as well, but again, we'll probably have to wait for him for that. But one thing I wanted to mention is this CSIS issue. There was a lawsuit in 2017 with 5 intelligence officers and other people there, where they use slurs, right? We're talking
Is
about
that a Canadian intelligence service or?
yes. So CSIS is the Canadian equivalent of the CIA. I think it's the Canadian Securities and I, to be honest, I don't know what they stand for, but yeah, they're the Canadian equivalent of the CIA.
All right.
Yeah, these are totally uncalled for. I'm not gonna try to
Yeah.
even defend them, but yeah, they're totally uncalled for. But yeah, overall in this article, I think that's basically this is another topic I wanted to talk about. Basically, I have the link for this in the 2015 Federal's Zero Tolerance for Barbaric Cultural Practices Act. For example, specifically targets polygamy, forced marriages, and honor killings. The description of the targeted forms of violence against women are strongly linked in the popular imagination with Muslim, Arab, and South Asian communities as barbaric practices. Now, I'm no intelligence officer, but I'm specifically going to say that polygamy, forced marriages, and honor killings are barbaric, and they are quite suitable under the term of barbaric cultural practices. Wouldn't you say that barbaric is a fair definition of such activities, Culture Ginny?
I do not think that you should use the term barbaric cultural practices. I think you should unwanted, or because you load it with a lot of baggage when you use terms such as barbaric. It's just me generally being an ass about language, but generally I do agree that these are practices that should be fought against in society if you have laws against, for example, polygamy and forced marriages and honor killings.
Yeah, let's actually look at that act itself. I have the act open. Let me get that tab up. So you can see the act here, right?
Yeah, Zero Tolerance for Barbaric Cultural Practices Act. I mean,
This is directly
seriously, no.
This is from
God.
the Government of Canada website.
God, no. I thought it was just something that was thrown into the middle text. I didn't think it was the name of the entire act.
It
God.
is. So basically, clarify that it's so in the criminal code. Basically, it says that it clarify that it's an offense for an officiant to knowingly solemnize a marriage in contravention of federal law. B. Provide that it is an offense to celebrate, aid, or participate in a marriage, rite, or ceremony knowing that one of the persons is being married and is doing so against their will or is under the age of 16. C. Provide that it is an offense to remove a child from Canada with the intention that an act is being committed outside Canada that, if were committed in Canada, would constitute the offense of celebrating, aiding, or participating in a marriage rite or ceremony, knowing that the child is doing so against their will or is under the age of 16. Now, nowhere in this act do they say that it is for a certain culture. And to any person that would do any of these acts, no matter what culture they're from, I think that they're monsters. I
I
mean,
don't
who
have
would do
any
that?
problem with this act, but I do have a problem when you when you name the act like this.
But yeah, the way they make it seem is that it's a racist act, but it's like,
No,
why
it
are you
isn't.
why are you
It's a
defending people who kidnap children that are 14 or 13, take them to another country and marry them off with some pedophile? Like it's not okay to do. It's monstrous. You're ruining a child's life. It's worse than attacking them. You're giving them psychological damage. People do not understand that. It's wrong. And I have no problem with maybe barbaric because it's associated with culture, but maybe calling it tolerance for monstrosities towards
no,
children or whatever.
zero tolerance for illegal cultural practices act.
Yeah, but
Because what I see in this is that it just rather reaffirms a lot of previous law that they are still in effect, and they say you can't break this with the excuse that you have a certain culture.
yeah, because like if you go back to this, the final statement that they put is such laws and policies claiming to save Muslim women have an extensive negative impact on Muslim women and their families, including social exclusion, economic marginalization, psychological effects such as fear, anxiety, depression, and frustration. Well, what about the mental health or psychological issues that come from one of these many acts?
I mean, yeah, I agree that I mean,
Like they're
God,
playing victim to it because like if they took a second, like I'm not
this is
I
like the entire controversy that happened in Sweden because Sweden have laws against child abuse, so they will take care of the children. I mean, remove them from the parents and place them in foster care if
God, I wish Moose was here
if
so he could like explain the law a bit more because like when it comes to legality, I'm probably the guy that'll hand the cop a blunt while I'm
yeah,
smoking
the
it.
same here. But in Sweden, we have these laws against child abuse. So the children will be taken from the parents and placed in, care by others if the children are abused. And this happened with a couple of Muslim families, and the child services took the children, and it caused a uproar.
Speak of the devil.
Ask and you shall receive. Ask and you shall receive. I just heard it. I just heard when you said, I wish Moose was here right now. And I'm like, ask and I have entered.
Hello, Moose. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. I was just a little like not feeling well up last night, so I ended up, oversleeping a bit. But that's on me. It's weird holiday season stuff. But yeah, how are you,
Yes.
Nick? How are you, Culture Ginny? Um,
We're talking about child kidnapping and the Zero Tolerance for Barbaric Cultural Practices Act.
Exact.
yes, and this has been happening. I think we guys cover in Pakistan the kidnapping of young girls?
Not yet, but if you
Mhm.
want, I'll share you the link. So I have the link on the screen of the act itself. If you can just explain to me what this act is in essence, or if you want me to put the link in the private
Oh
chat, you
no,
can.
I so basically this is from the what do you call it? Is this from the Canadian legislation?
Yes. So basically, it's in the chat right now, the link. So
Hmm.
we were reading this article. I'll share the article with you or I'll put the article on the screen right now. Basically says that the 2015 Federal Zero Tolerance for Barbaric Practices Act, for example, specifically targets polygamy, forced marriages, and honor killings. The description of the targeted forms of violence against women, strongly linked in the popular imagination with Muslim, Arab, and South Asian communities as barbaric cultural practices, reinforces stigmatized stereotypes about the community.
Oh boy, this
I,
is
at, first, I,
And
at first, I thought that the name of the act was a joke. Wait, named it Zero Tolerance for Barbaric Cultural Practices Act, and
and
they did name it.
yeah.
And Moose, I would like to read you one more statement. Such laws and policies claiming to save Muslim women have extensive negative impacts on Muslim women and their families, including social exclusion, economic marginalization, and psychological effects such as anxiety, fear, depression, and frustration. Now, if I put the link in the chat, if you can unravel this for us and our audience from a legal standpoint, I would absolutely love it.
Okay, one
Sorry
second.
to put you on the spot here.
One second. I'm trying to like copy this.
I'll send it to you on WhatsApp.
Yeah, yeah. Just send it to me in WhatsApp because it feels like some form of victim playing. Does it? That's the
For
statements do
me,
feel like it victim playing because there
they
is
don't bring up
no
the concept of religion
no
there at
But
all.
no.
I would still say that the ones that proposed this act and got it through were still very stupid in naming it.
Yeah, they
Moose,
were
I sent
very
it to you in private chat.
all right. Perfect.
The language could have been changed a bit.
Now, keep in mind, we have a bit of okay, zero tolerance for barbaric as of 2015, and it got its royal assent in 2015. Okay, and it's actually amended to the Immigration Refugee Protection Act,
Do you
Civil
want
Marriage
to share
Act.
the screen? You want to share
Sure,
your screen? Yeah.
sure. All right, let me just
That was why I said it seemed like a clarification of previous laws.
yeah.
They were
Now keep in mind, what do you call it? It's an addition, right? So it's not like it's an amendment to the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act, Civil and Marriage Act, which still exists, the Immigration Protection Refugee, because I work in refugee law and immigration law. Mainly, I work in refugee law, but that's besides. And the criminal code, the Canadian Criminal Code. So it amends that specifically that a permanent or is inadmissible on grounds of practicing polygamy in Canada. That is, so it's a permanent. It's more on to do with permanent residency status. So what do you call it? There's zero tolerance for barbaric in the civil to provide for a free and enlightened consent to marriage, and for any previous to be dissolved, declared null before a new marriage is contracted. So it's actually adding to an existing. But these are just the two minor things. But the main things it's adding is amending the criminal code. So there's actually because the criminal code itself has it's actually quite extensive. I have the thick book. Provide an offense to celebrate aid. Yes, so this is preventing child marriages under the age of 16. Remove it is an offense to remove a child from Canada with an intention to act that act be committed outside Canada. If it were committed in Canada, would constitute an offense of celebrating, aiding, or participating in a marriage. So it's like, basically preventing forced marriages. Provide that a judge may order a person to enter into a recognizance with conditions to keep peace and be of good behavior for the purposes of preventing. I know it's a bunch of gibberish. My apologies. Offense relating to marriage against their will. Yeah, so it's basically clarifying a lot of things. Like it's actually expanding the definitions. Marriage of a person under or relating to the removal of a child committing such a marriage, if it were, and providing that a defense provocation is so it is punishable for 5 years or more in prison for whoever is, let's just say, participating in the status or forces. So it may be cited as, again, the short title may be cited as, but keep in mind, it's sort of like an amendment to 3 different acts specifically. So, what do you call it? So I don't know where it's saying it's targeting specifically, what do you call it? Women, Muslim women.
It does not.
No.
It does not. When I went through it, it did not. But I just said that I didn't like when you named the act, and mentioned barbaric in law. It shouldn't be.
Yeah, zero
like
tolerance.
I just thought that a lot of the wordings here were a bit clumsy or not really professional. But that's
I don't. Nikhil, who was in government during when this act got royal assent?
What year did Trudeau win?
I know he won in 2015, but what month? Because that would make a difference. Because this got royal assent in June of 2015. What year did Trudeau? Because this could have been...
Isn't elections in November? Federal elections?
Yeah.
So I think Harper's government was still there.
Yeah, that's why they named it so clumsily. Because again, we had a conservative government. So, they were part... So I know I sorry with the politics, but I'm not necessarily surprised why they named it barbaric cultural practices because of
if they just meant it zero tolerance for illegal cultural practices act, it would have been no issue, because I just think that this was just clumsily done.
Yeah, because if it's saying
then I also have a question, Mose. Now, I'm not an expert, since you are an expert on Canadian law and such. Well, I thought that this was more of a clarification or rather standardization of what was previous practice.
Yeah, because keep in mind, it's just an act to amend. Like here, it's an amendment only, and it's an act brought in. So I don't see any, it's not addressing any particular barbaric culture, unless it's being more broad about certain practices. For example, I think it's being more broad regarding practices such as even domestic violence, such as even genital mutilation. What do you call it? So those are the kind of practices I think it's trying to be as broad as possible. But I feel like they did not specify it more. They were focused more on the marriage aspect.
I think they wanted to leave it as broad as possible so they can cover a lot more things.
Because keep in mind, criminal code comes in too. Now, if you're in the criminal code, then yes, it has to be the complainant aged 14 to 15. So basically, they're specifying, how much of the age difference is. Let's just say 5 years, is not in a position of trust or authority. This one's a big one. is not in a position of trust towards the complainant. So this is this is kind of outlining the exception, where if it was made to what do you call it? If both parties, like if in respect was 14 but more than the age of 6, it is a defense that a complaint. So this is providing defense too, like how you can defend if you're charged with, let's just say, forced marriage, for example. Or certain cultural practices like forced marriage would constitute an indictable. So this is an indictable offense. An indictable offense is basically more than 5 years. It's a very serious offense, an indictable offense. Punishable 5 more years of imprisonment is such that deprive an ordinary person of the power of self-control as provocation for purposes of this section. Yeah, I know lots of gibberish, but it's very broad. And I feel like
I think quite intentionally so.
Yeah, so there's no intentionally marginalizing a specific community. But personally, I feel they should add a few more things too. I feel like they should add, like, yeah, I feel like they should add more specific examples, like different types of cultural practices that are not necessarily tolerated in British Canadian or French Canadian or British Canadian society. That I feel like they should be a bit more specific in future if there's any proposed amendment to this. But I feel like it's an amendment to 3 different acts, so that's where it's because it's a marriage act. It's also an issue with the immigration and refugee, because there was a case where there was a minor, I think it was 14 or 16 years old, with a much older man from Syria, and they had to have a hearing, but they had to make an exception for this particular case because of the fact that the minor was in a position that they were able to make that decision, rather than they were able to make that decision. It wasn't necessarily like a forced decision. But that was just one weird exception. We'll look into that case in probably future. I'll try to find that, but that was one exception. But generally speaking, there's a very, I think, low tolerance for.
And Moose, what would you say to drastic measures comment here? I think.
Oh yeah, surprised to see the word barbaric in a piece of. I was expecting more PC like practices we would like to discourage. I
think anyone who, like, as a crude terminology, as a common man saying it, I think it is quite barbaric to take a young little 15-year-old girl
I agree
to a different
with you
country.
I agree with you, but even I thought that when at the first time I mentioned it when I first saw this here on the screen, I just thought, oh God, they named it. They actually named it using the word barbaric. I don't think that is good, legal language or something that should be in a act with legal weight.
I know it shouldn't, but at the same time, keep in mind that you want to be more specific, right? With especially when it's an amendment to the criminal code, that is.
Yeah, illegal. They could have mentioned illegal cultural practices or something,
or
to make it very specific.
Yeah, but keep in mind,
if I'm a cannibal, cannibalism is also an illegal cultural practice.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't think that term is 100% apt here.
Yeah. So I think,
but it's at least more defined than just barbaric.
Yeah, well, keep in mind, that's what I feel like they should add, what defines as barbaric too, because I feel like they failed to define what it was considered a barbaric cultural practice.
Do you know what this reminds me of? This entire situation.
Which one?
When I was watching Daniel Hakikachu and Aaron Rod debate each other, and Daniel Hakikachu was like, atheists. If you were an atheist, you would want as many wives. You would want 5 or more wives. And he knew full well that if he said 4, he would be like, "Oh, Islam allows 4 as well." So I think like the whole goal, like the whole idea of them saying that, "Oh, it's Islamophobic for you to call this a barbaric practice."
Yeah.
And
Even
I'm
that
like,
doesn't
bro,
have.
you realize the entire law is focused on stopping 16-year-olds being like kidnapped from the country to be
Mhm. And
put
this
in
is
an
this
arranged marriage situation.
Yeah, and this actually is a relatively common practice, not just in Muslim communities, but in general Middle Eastern and South Asian communities at large too. So this,
And in African
and in
communities
the
as well.
African communities, not
Didn't we find out that the most common place for child marriages was Ethiopia or something in a
Yeah.
yeah, and
previous
it's a
show?
Christian majority country, surprisingly.
Yes.
So it's and
Yeah.
a lot of times even in I've had a friend who is from Israel, that is, and she said that yeah, there are incidents of child marriage even in a country that like Israel as well too. So
Yeah.
among the Jewish
Moose.
populace,
Speaking of
halal
Jew,
kosher, that's
yeah,
about right. What's Canada? I mean, there's with slaughter, what do you call it? There are also guidelines too on halal kosher slaughter in Canada. So the halal kosher has to have a an inspector, that is a health inspector. So basically, mainly on the meat hygiene, that is, and hygiene and the practices too. And it cannot be done out in the streets like it's done in during Eid or something. Even during Eid, you have to go to a slaughterhouse, specifically get an appointment. You have to wait in line. You have to have, and you cannot do it without the presence of any health inspection or anything like that. So there's a lot of guidelines. So I don't think they see it as barbaric, because they see it as more, because even in Canada, people eat meat too, right? So,
yeah,
and of course, Raza Aslan would say something like, it's an African problem, not a Muslim. I know Raza Aslan would
yeah,
say exactly that.
yeah. I this what brings to me like what comes to my mind with this question that the dude abides asks is when people for the World Cup were saying, "Hey, you got to respect Qatar's culture" when it came to homosexuality.
Hmm.
There's a huge difference between the culture of food and the
Yes.
culture of kidnapping kids for marriage.
Yeah. Exactly.
Uh,
Big,
I
big difference.
respect people's food's requirements. Hey, I got certain dietary restrictions. You got certain dietary restrictions. I'll respect those two to an extent, but I'm not sitting here like
Yeah.
I'll
And
call it
even
what it is. If kidnapping kids is
and
definitely barbaric
and
in my
and
opinion.
and drastic. Keep in mind, FGM also is a practice, even though it's also common in the Christian African communities. It has even backing from Islamic scholars too, and there's a huge debate, especially from traditional scholars, that they do promote FGM. And yeah, like Nikhil said, if it's a practice like, let's just say, how you make your food, that, or how you slaughter your animals, that's fine. Like even indigenous practices such as hunting, and hunting certain types of animals, and hunting seasons have to be respected in Canada. That is, in Canada, this is because, or certain religious practices regarding certain what do you call it, cuisines, and certain you know uh, traditional ways of hunting. There's methods of hunting, such as certain seasons of hunting fish, for example, or hunting seals, or hunting certain game. The indigenous have what do you call it, primary uh, like they call dibs, in according to even the charter, that is, they have a dibs. And yeah, so I know I couldn't find a better term than dibs, but yeah, they do have the priority. So yeah, that's a cultural practice that one can expect to be protected. But like you said, if you have something like FGM, or you have something like forced marriages, or even if you have something like what do you call it? There are numerous, but I don't know. I'm running out of what do you call it? Oh, and even like beatings and lashings that are allowed in some cultures, but like slavery, for example, like forced indentured servitude, all that stuff. Because there's also kidnapping of forcing them into becoming servants as well too. So
Yeah, Moose, I actually have a question as well.
mhm.
So in this amendment, it always says that a person who fears on reasonable grounds that another person will commit an offense under paragraph 273.31-D or whatever the section might be, may lay this information before a provincial court. Isn't this a federal law? Why are the
Yeah,
provincial
yeah.
courts taking
They
care of
have
this?
the option because it opens up the option, right? Because it doesn't have
Yeah.
to be. It could be any court that can address this issue, and they can actually file an application or lodge a complaint in any locations, kind of like opening it up, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of what do you call it? Because keep in mind, not many offices of federal court, because every office is located in a different direction. So you can even go to a nearby court that only deals with provincial offenses. Because I know provincial offenses are regarding traffic and stuff, but you can still file a complaint there too.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes the process easier for the victim.
Yeah. Just on a side note, if anyone is watching this and is going through that problem, what I know, like this entire law or whatever we covered is or amendments are all a pile of gibberish for an average person, especially someone that probably has that anxiety. So, in a streamlined fashion, if someone's going through that, first of all, how is it not Islamophobic? How is this law Islamophobic? If you can clarify that according to the article. And second, what can someone do about this? Just to like untangle all the gibberish we talked about so far.
So basically, you're saying that how can you interpret it such that it's not Islamophobic?
Or basically, this lady here says that, or whoever wrote this article says that this is Islamophobic and it targets Muslim women,
Hmm.
that and causes social exclusion, economic marginalization, and psychological effects such as anxiety, fear, and depression and frustration. Just this law, the law itself. So, what's your statement in like a clear way uh, on what this article is saying about this law? And
I
then
think
second, yeah,
I think what she's trying to say is that because it's so normalized in certain cultures, like the husband getting arrested for or family members getting arrested, she would get shamed by the rest of the family, or she would get ostracized by the rest of the family because of the fact that she decided to complain against them. So this I think this is where the ostracization comes from. So this in itself is what do you call it? It's like best way I can, the most simplest way I could say it. They're pissed at her because she snitched at them, for example, and also that she's they would also see it as, oh, girls are getting too much protection under Canadian law, so that's why they ostracize certain women, and already on top of that, divorce is such a big, like for example, laws like divorce or separation are such already a big stigma on its own. So I can see where this idea of ostracizing Muslim women is coming from, but at the same time, wouldn't you want to protect them from
yeah.
harm, from imminent harm?
And yeah,
Because
on that note, I just want to ask again. Obviously, this is a criminal act,
mhm,
and rightfully so. So, a girl or whoever's in this situation, boy or girl, I'm not going to put the gender because it happens on both
yes.
sides. What should they do about this? Because obviously, it is a criminal act, and it is rightfully so. So, anyone who's watching, just to clarify it for them, out of all the gibberish,
So what they should do if they find themselves in that situation?
yeah,
Call the police. Simple as that. Or complain to the nearest law enforcement office. That is, make sure you specify, tell them everything, have evidence. That is, and because they do take these cases very seriously. They may not take what do you call it? You know, they may what do you call it? Not take other complaints as seriously, but they will take any form of domestic violence or domestic abuse, any form of such family-related abuse. They will take this very, very seriously. And they will actually, the workers, they will guide you as to what your next steps are, etc. So that, simple as that, literally call the police. Or even if you have doubts about that because there's a stigma behind it, contact the law society. They should, what do you call it, they do have certain lawyers that can provide you 30 minutes free consultation, any form of legal aid, for example. So you can go there. But I would say immediately, if you're facing imminent threat, go to the police. Seriously. Literally just go to the police. Call 911. Simple as that.
In the quite the similar metaphor, these people are the same people that would in high school would give you weed or other illicit drugs and peer pressure you into taking it and say that you're a horrible person for not doing it, because both are
Yeah.
criminal acts. Both people are guilting you into not being a criminal, or
Yeah.
guilting you into being a criminal.
Yeah.
So they're just bullies.
Yeah, basically it's just a form of cultural bullying, right? And this is very
What are
common
they doing? Like, think about it on the baseline. What are they doing? They're telling you to do something illegal, and then when you say I don't want to do something illegal and you call the police, they're shaming you about it. So
yeah. So this is pretty much, they're not very different from street thugs, if anything. Not very different. I sorry if I'm blunt about it, but yeah. Also, yeah, technically you can legally own guns, but you do have to be a bit careful, drastic, because you can still be charged for, if you end up in a situation like that. Like, I don't want the victim to necessarily be charged with
assault.
manslaughter, assault, or even murder, for example, because it is an indictable offense with a longer prison sentence. So I would prefer that, unless they have someone, if they can prove self-defense, and even that, you have to really prove. It's very difficult for the defense to prove self-defense, at least in Canadian law.
And then doesn't the gun have to be disassembled? So if someone's attacking you, it's like, hey, fuck off for a sec. Let me assemble my gun. What the fuck's the combination to my safe?
It's more to do with, like, it's more as, even if the gun is fully like loaded and stuff, you had no other choice. If in that situation you have no other choice, that's a good defense. That is.
Yeah.
So this is an option to shoot the knees, as a form of, like, avoid killing them too, right? You don't want to kill them. So this is another situation that you can use if you have a handgun, that is. So heck, you can even have a sword in your hand, and you can actually use that as self-defense too. But yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and Moose, I also want to get your opinion on a few statistics that we read earlier, just as a Canadian person as well. So basically, 46% of Canadians have an unfavorable view of Islam, more than for any other religious tradition. It's from the same article.
Interesting. 46% have an unfavorable view of Islam, but is she placing them on because fewer than find half go down, for the one children to marry a Muslim, lower than any other religious group, which is an interesting find, but one of their children to marry a Muslim, because there is definitely a stigma attached to it, for sure, because of obvious Islamic practices. 56% believe that Islam suppresses women, and I find it's relatively low for me at least, because at the same time, Canadian society is also very, defends Muslims from criticism. No, not from discrimination. Discrimination. Yes, the system is very strict on discrimination. Like, you cannot be religiously discriminated against. People feel mainstream doctrines promote violence, which is interesting. 52% of Canadians feel that Muslims can only be trusted a little or not at all. Interesting. Actually, no, that's 52. Wow. 42% think discrimination is mainly their fault. And 47% Canadians support banning headscarves in public compared to 30% of Americans. And this was an issue. This was back in 51% support government surveillance in mosques compared to 46% Americans, which I'm not necessarily surprised by. Because keep in mind, it's not just necessarily Christian Canadians. There's also like Canadians of other groups as well, too.
Yeah.
31% approve American President Donald Trump restrictions on travel. I'm not surprised by this. I'm not surprised. But which is, keep in mind, look, the number for this is very low for bigotry, that is, this kind of bigotry. But the numbers for like 55% say that Islamophobia is overblown. So it's like there's a big disconnect, because 31% is, what do you call it, bigotry, but a good chunk of it is, what do you call it, genuine concern. There is genuine concern about, what do you call it, Islamic practices that are seen as very problematic. So I'm not necessarily surprised by these numbers. I am surprised that they're a bit, they're from 2015, aren't they?
2015 to 2017.
Yeah, so I feel like
out of the 15 articles that so the article itself was written in 2020, but out of the 15 sources she cited, or this person cited, only 4 of them were after 2018. The rest were 2017 to 2010 to 2017.
And keep in mind, there were a lot of Muslim parliamentarians in 2015 too that should have opposed to this, but they didn't. A lot of Muslim parliamentarians, but there was no issue with it because the act itself has to know, is it specifically discriminating one community? So the fact that it's she says that the act discriminates against Muslim communities is a bit. That one's overblown. But yeah, I personally feel that there is a bit of a divide, like on a 60-40 or 50-50 between genuine critics of Islam, with the 56% of the population, versus those that are bigoted, that is. I would say they're close to 30%, or 27 to 30%. Like, this is very, it's kind of like a mix of these numbers.
Yeah. In any case, I got stuff to do, holidays and all.
Yeah.
So let's end the show now. One thing I'm doing is this weekend I'm gonna do the live stream that I mentioned about.
Yes.
Basically, I'm gonna set a video on Premiere showing all my favorite episodes of this year. So yeah, that's my final closing statement. Culture Ginny, do you have anything as a closing?
Yes. Just to clarify, I do not think that anything in this act was clearly Islamophobic. I also think that most things in this act were just clarifications about previous law, and to make what was earlier praxis into concrete statements about how it should be ruled. And I do agree with this, act, but I still have a very big issue when you use the word barbaric in a legal act that has legal weight, because I think it's important in law to actually be very, devoid of these sort of wordings.
Sort of terminology.
Yeah,
But
sort of terminology that can muddy and valorize things in ways that doesn't belong to a court.
But keep in mind, Culture Ginny, in Canadian courts, that is, they're relatively very blunt about many things. You have to be blunt in Canada specifically because of the kinds of we have not only multicultural and multi-religious, but also like multiple scams, multiple kind of criminal activities, and immigration-related issues and refugee-related issues. So I think they have to be super, super blunt. Hi, Zane, Sammy, you're coming at the end of the show.
No,
Hello.
You sound like you're at the bottom of a well.
I do.
Now
Well,
it's better.
I bought
Now
myself
it's better.
a new.
Now it's
All
better.
right.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
I do apologize that I am very late to this discussion, and I heard that it's going to be wrapped up in a bit. But I thought that I may
Oh
as
yeah,
well show up.
please give
and,
your 2 cents.
give 1 or 2 comments. If that's all right.
Oh yeah, please go ahead. The floor is all yours. I'd love hearing from you. So
Okay. Well, I'm going to be honest. I did miss most of this discussion. So I don't know exactly what event you were talking about, but I do trust that you guys were as honest as you possibly can be, because I've been on this platform many times, and I know the work that you do is mostly it's stating the facts and being as honest as possible, as fair as possible. So I trust you guys on that. But I will add one thing in defense of our Muslim brothers and sisters. I would like to add one thing, and I do try to always bring this point up. When this term was coined, Islamophobia, after 9/11, I think at the time it was actually a fair term. We do say this again and again. Islamophobia is a term that is very misused, and it's very misleading as well, because we've given the name Islamophobia to the criticism of Islam. And that is totally unfair, because criticizing a belief system and ideology is not a phobia, because beliefs don't have rights, people have rights. Anti-Muslim bigotry is a better term, right? I'm sure, Moose, you brought this up many times. You do that.
Yes.
But we have to acknowledge this. After 9/11, what the US government did to the Muslim citizens of America, I think that actually was Islamophobia. And you know why? Because based on their Muslim names, thousands of citizens, innocent citizens, were put in jails, in torture chambers, and they were beaten and they were tortured for months and months, to the point that some of them lost their ability to walk, some of them lost their ability to talk, some of them lost their sanity. They were tortured for no reason, only based on their Muslim names. They were tortured. This is when the Muslims in America and worldwide said that, oh, we are being targeted only because we're Muslim. I think at the time it was a fair argument to make, because the way that they were treated at the time was totally, totally unfair. So yeah, I think that is something that we shouldn't forget when we talk about Islamophobia.
Yeah, to be honest, though, we didn't talk about time directly after 9/11. We talked about the last decade.
Yeah, so we're more concerned. I think we were talking about the last decade, where the it's become a little overblown, like especially the 2010s, that is. But I think you have bring a fair point that there was discrimination against the Muslim community, for sure.
Yeah,
there was discrimination, and if anything, the criticism of said ideology was kind of weaponized as a form of discrimination. So I think,
and remember, it's only based on their Muslim names. So I think it's fair to call that Islamophobia, don't you think?
I'm still because I can still see it as anti-Muslim bigotry, because it's still, or anti-Muslim discrimination, because of the fact that the religion itself is not attacked. But keep in mind, the term Islamophobia, I was reading that it used to exist even prior to 9/11. But
Maybe,
in
yeah,
very,
maybe.
very like short doses, that is. And it was interestingly a term used to criticize, what do you call it, Muslims themselves, liberal Muslims,
Okay.
that were not practicing Muslims, that is. So it didn't.
Well,
Uh,
I was under the impression that it was coined after 9/11. I'm not surprised. If I'm
It
wrong,
was
I'm
it was
absolutely not
actually
surprised.
older.
yeah, it's a lot older
It was it yes
from
it
the
was.
70s.
I do know that even Edward Said even used it.
Yeah. So it's I feel like one can trace the terminology even back to the 70s,
Right,
70s or
right.
80s.
Well, I'm not actually surprised to hear that. You know
Yeah.
why? Because Islam's history is full of blood and conflict anyway,
Yeah.
amongst each other and with other communities. So
And
I'm not too surprised to hear that.
and keep in mind the
The
context
context.
and the
All
context.
civilizations and cultures are bloody histories. It's
Yeah.
human nature.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And keep
absolutely.
in
That's
mind
human nature. It's not
and
just
keep in
Muslim
mind
nature. That's human nature.
and keep in mind the context of the terminology was very different compared to after 9/11. So definitely there was a shift in 9/11, and then now I feel like there's this shift that people are calling out the term that, okay, this is not necessarily very accurate as a term, and should be,
Yeah, because
not.
it's like taking reality and spinning it.
Yeah.
Because you're always playing the victim. If your beliefs and ideas are being called out and criticized, and you call it a phobia, then obviously you are taking you're taking what's actually going on, and you're putting a spin on it. So it's too easy to weaponize this term. I'm not really a fan of the term either, but I thought that one point should be put out there in defense of the Muslim community, that they were discriminated against and
Oh yeah.
only based on their Muslim names. So we have to
Yeah.
take that into account.
And there's a lot of what do you call it, police, and what do you call it, it's what's that term called, Nick? What is that term called with when you're discriminating against a person based on a particular culture, skin color,
Racial
etc.?
profile. Racial
Yes, it's a
profiling.
form of profiling did indeed exist for a while.
Yeah,
And
there's actually a couple of movies about it as well with Shah Rukh Khan.
even there was a movie called Khuda Ke Liye as well, a Pakistani movie
Oh yeah,
that
yeah. That was a good
made
one.
that. Yeah, it was a good
and
movie.
there's this one that I really liked with Vivek Oberoi who did it. I forgot the name, but it's with
Oh,
Saif
Kurban.
Ali Khan. Yeah, Kurban.
Kurban.
Yeah, it's with Saif Ali Khan and Vivek Oberoi.
Yeah.
And I really like that movie. Anyone who wants to watch it. Oh, and
Yeah.
Zayn Sami, I gotta tell you something.
Okay.
You're actually gonna be in the live stream, the video next on Christmas of the best shows of this year. Your episode's actually on that list. So
Absolutely,
yeah,
that's
I
great.
absolutely love having you on.
Absolutely, I can come on the show as well. And if you want to play clips that from the past,
Oh,
by all means
it's
do
gonna
that.
be it's gonna be pre-recorded and released as a premiere. But yeah,
Yeah,
you're gonna be your episode's actually on there, just because of how many great conversations we had with you. I never actually got a
yeah,
chance to
great.
thank you, so I want to take this time to thank you for it.
Yeah, you're welcome. And you'll probably be seeing more of me from here on because I've got a new mic, so
Oh,
I'm kind of in
perfect.
the mood. I'm in the mood to kind of talk. So
So our
this is
next
what
show
we do here.
is our next show is December 30th,
30th.
which is the another Friday, because I think just for these 2 weeks we're just doing the Friday because of the fact that the 24th and 31st are usually very busy days for almost everybody.
Yes.
So it's and then following January we'll just resume the Saturday timings. And I think, Nikhil, for next week, I wanted to cover. There was a study on Canada's orchestrated Islamophobia industry. There was a weird
Yeah.
article that you sent me, and I read it. I was like, "What the fuck are they talking about?"
Oh yeah,
So
I could hear you screeching in pain.
yeah, I was like cringing at this so bad. And Zayn Sami, you will enjoy it. You will enjoy it. Culture Ginny, you'll enjoy it. And even all of the people in the panel audience will enjoy this conversation.
Yeah. When is
Um,
it coming?
December
On
next
30.
Friday. Next Friday.
Next Friday.
And
Yeah.
we'll just cover a lot of articles because we've been coming across a lot of these articles, these videos. Even there was a Muhammad Hijab video that I wanted to see where he talks about racism, which it's oh, and we should do like a show on UK's APPG definition of Islamia.
There's actually this one video, Moose, I'll send it to you in private chat,
Yeah.
that I want to do. Take a look at it. I think for that topic, I think this video is very good.
Yeah. So we'll
And
definitely.
what about our good friend Andrew Tate? Have you done a podcast on him?
We have not actually. I know Drastic Measures right here. This beautiful commentator right here has done a video on Andrew Tate and Muhammad.
How dare you call him by his kufr name? It's Abu Tate.
Abu Tate.
Yeah. I thought it was Abdul Tate.
Abdul Tate. Oh my goodness. And the reason, like, it's so like I actually wanted to do a longer episode on Tate because there's also the history prior to his Islamic conversion.
I remember just a week ago I got into an argument about him. God, no. This is giving me flashbacks to that.
Yeah, I know, because there's crimes even prior to his so-called conversion that need to be looked into, and he's one of the voices of like the anti
Anjum Tate, that's a good one.
That's a good one.
I remember Anjum Tate.
You should, considering that, we usually give, or we have been, some here on this show have been given Jordan Peterson some flack recently. We should at least acknowledge that Jordan Peterson, he is like an angel in comparison to Andrew Tate.
Oh, for sure. For fucking sure. And Jordan Peterson, I find now, like, he's just ridiculous. And I feel like he's more just like Christian propaganda artist, but that's about it. Tate, on the other hand, I'm sorry, motherfucker needs to be put in different jails all around the world and tortured. Literally.
Okay.
What's a bit spicy, but yes, I kind of agree.
Yeah.
I would love for you, Moose. I would love for you to educate me about his past and exactly what this guy is all about, because I've heard so many good things about him that I'm starting to think that maybe Allah kind of designed him from some different material than the rest of us and sent him to this world as a gift to us. So I really need to know what the truth is.
Yeah, and I think there's another YouTuber called Illuminati. She writes her term as Illuminati, but naughty. She does the play on words, and she's done a good what do you call it?
Video package or something.
Video history on it. But this was prior to his conversion to Islam, by the way. But I'll see what sources she's used, plus a few other sources. But yeah, if you guys want to do Tate, if you want to do like the Islamophobia study, it's up for grabs. We can even discuss it on the chat too, Zay and Sammy, if you like.
I mean, you can do whatever you like, but I would like to do a podcast on Tate because I'd like to say a few things and I'd like to learn a few things about our good friend Abdul Tate.
and yes, Anjum Tate. And Zay and Sammy, are you feeling oozy right now?
Very, very oozy, yes. So you can see, you notice the difference, the change.
Yes, I can notice that you put in bloodline because you're part of the bloodline now, and you're being acknowledged by.
I even bought myself a box of oozy pebbles.
Yeah, so you need to be what do you call it? You're part of the family of the tribal chief, the global tribal chief, Roman Reigns.
It's more than a family, bro. It's a bloodline.
But
it's a lineage.
Guys, I got dinner coming up.
Yes. So we have to wrap this up. thank you so much. We're not gonna do unless Zain, do you want to come on? What do you call it? Discord.
Discord?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we can do that. Yes.
Yeah. So
All right.
Nick, do your thing, and we're just gonna discuss this on Discord. We'll not stay too long. That is, if anybody has commitments. But thank you again, everybody, so much for joining us, and have a pleasant evening, everyone. And I'll end this broadcast right now.
And Christmas.